Let me start. Anybody in the back have a question for us? Yes. I'm sorry, can you say it again? Right. I'm having a hard time, I'm sorry. Excuse me one second.
It's about Epic
Okay.
Insurance here, which is a New York State-based prescription plan.
Oh, sure. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. So with regards to Epic New York State-based prescription plans, typically what you'll find is state by state and with the plans available that there is some alleviation of donor hole costs depending on the state, on the plan itself. I can't comment exactly on how much Epic will provide, but also depending on whether you buy an Advantage plan or original Medicare, there will also be an impact towards the type of coverage you can have. I could do some homework for you on state specifics. Unfortunately, I couldn't answer your question very definitively for you, so I apologize about that. But thank you for your question. Others? Sure.
I have a question. I knew that somebody that had a stroke, and let's say they're in rehab, and he is getting better, he's got loss of speech or whatever. So you're saying, what happens at day 100? Medicare stops paying, and then they have to make a determination before then as to what they're going to do?
Great. It's a great question, and it's a real situation that happens a lot, right? So someone's had a stroke, they're making progress, but they're up against day 100. What happens day 101? Medicare stops paying. At that point, you have to make a determination. Can you afford to stay where you are? Do you have to go someplace else where it might be a little more affordable?
Once they've signed up for Medicare, I've seen some evidence that because this is such a confusing issue, people make a decision once when they have to, and then they don't revisit.
Right. It's a good question. It is very complex, and it's one of those things where you think, well, I've got it over with, but you may very well have made a good decision for that period of time, but as things change down the road, there may be better plans for you, and that's a good question. A lot of people don't change, although some that do don't realize there are implications of changing as well. But it's important to make sure that, now we'll go back to the penny wise and pound foolish. It's important to make sure that just because a plan might be less expensive to purchase, it may not provide you with the best coverage to own. And so it's always good to go in and check your supplemental plans, check your prescription plans on a regular basis, and that's where the resources can help you, where you may have had a change in your prescription plans, what's covered and what's not. You may have had a change in your health going forward with a different diagnosis or prognosis. You may be healthier, or your health may have digressed. And it makes sense to review the coverage you have versus the coverage available to make sure you have the best coverage for the best price along the way. Thank you for your question. The one thing to know is that if you do change your supplemental plan, so let's say you bought option 1 and you enrolled when you were supposed to enroll within that 6-month window of enrolling in B, and you want to change your plan, you will have to answer questions as if you're buying the plan for the first time. However, if you're changing the plan not because you have to physically, but because you want to buy a plan that maybe you can afford more of now or need to afford a little less of in the future, and you're still healthy, there's no issue with having to answer those questions. So someone who actually is using it and needs it may not want to make a change, right? Because making a change may cost them more than not making a change, but that's where this gets confusing, and it's important to know what does it offer, what does it cover, and what makes the most sense for me, both on the initial cost and the ongoing cost of using it. So good question, thank you. Sure, question?
Maybe too personal, but what's your definition of cancer? Does it include skin cancer, or is it usually not lethal?
It does, and thank you for your question. The question is, when you're answering questions on the questionnaire, whatever the disease state or illness or even injuries may be, basically, why aren't we breaking it down? Because there's so many different types that you may have out there, including cancer, right? Well, statistically, Milliman tells us that to do what we're doing without getting down to the very last drop, if you will, any diagnosis of something like cancer will put us in a good financial range of what your healthcare costs may be. And so the answer to your question simply is any diagnosis is simply a yes response. But the real factor is how recent was that diagnosis, because that can have more to do with going forward than something that differentiating between different cancers along the way. Who else? Yes? How often do the rules change? They are very fluid. So healthcare laws and rules are changing regularly. We've had this tool available now for 2.5 years, and we've made adjustments based on things that have changed. What you need to know is that this was new after the Affordable Care Act was lost. So we factored everything in, but since then they've changed things like the Affordable Care Act was also supposed to include long-term care. They've pulled that out. There was a medical device tax that was supposed to kick in. They've deferred that. So we're keeping this current, but healthcare rules, laws, and regulations change on a regular basis. It all depends on which group on Capitol Hill has somebody's ear the best, right? Yeah, one of the reasons they moved open enrollment back the way they have is because, number one, the question was, can we anticipate changes with open enrollment? Ideally, October 15th through December 7th should give someone enough time, knowing what changes are coming, to make a change for January 1, to have it effective January 1. The problem with open enrollment in December in the past was that everybody was making changes. They were waiting to know as much as they can know if there were changes, and then they weren't getting their coverage effective January 1. So they moved it back to October 15th to give you time to look out to what do I know today to make changes going forward, but they kept it as late as December 7th in case something changes later to give you a chance to still have effective coverage come January 1. Oh, sure. Absolutely. Yeah. We can see changes, and the issue is, especially with prescription where we see more people making changes, a drug company changes a drug company is no longer covered by a particular plan next year. Or in August, your doctor says, we're not going to use that drug anymore, let's use this drug. Well, guess what? The drug, you say, but doc, that one's covered, this one isn't. Well, the doc says, but this one's better for you, what do you do? Right? So things like that, you have to wait to make changes, but you can make those changes effective for the next year. But if any healthcare laws or rules change, what's covered, what it's going to cost, we'll also incorporate those different changes into our assessment as quickly as we can. Thank you for your questions. Other questions? Great questions. Anybody else? Yes, hi there.
Do you have any insight in the effects of Obamacare and the price of Medicare Advantage plans?
Yeah, thank you for your question. So, any insight on the cost of Obamacare on Advantage plans? Well, what do we know? Three big areas of concern when it comes to the costs related to the Affordable Care Act or Obamacare. One is the reimbursement to the Advantage plans, or to the hospitals, right? There are cuts there. So the question is, how long can they remain profitable and in business? It's a concern, right? Number two, the cuts to the cost and reimbursement rates to physicians, right? Why are so many physicians moving out of private practice into the hospitals, right? Because they're finding that they can provide their services for something that's more relative to what they should be reimbursed for their profession, right? And number three is money taken from Medicare and given to Medicaid, right? So there have been Medicare costs, right, at the higher end of the earnings level for Medicaid. So to your question, it's a lot of what's going on right now on the Hill has a lot to do with some people think it's not sustainable, and let's take time to fix it. Others think, let's get it going, and we'll fix it while we're going. So my answer for you is, I don't think either of them are right, and they're both right, because something has to be done. It's not sustainable. It's going to cost a lot more for those who make more. It's going to reimburse less, and that can lead to lower quality or other professionals coming into the market that may not have been the professionals that we're used to having in the market today, meaning doctors and so on. So money drives all this, follow the dollars and everything, right? So it's too early to say one way or the other, but the red flags are up, and this is why people are concerned. And I told you earlier, I've worked long and hard to remain apolitical on this. I think this is, I've got to stop the recording here because my opinion means nothing, right? But what did I really like about President Reagan, President Clinton? They said to Congress, cut the baloney out, get together, and don't come out till this is figured out. We're not seeing that right now, right? We're saying our way or the highway. And then we're seeing a lot of, well, let's try this, let's try this. Well, none of that's part of what they want to do. What we need is both houses of Congress come together and say, we hear you, how can we make this work? And then what will they do? Throw other stuff into that we never wanted them to, and they'll pass the bill and we'll be all off and running, right? But that's where we are today. We're kind of in a mess today, and we all know it, and they're going to know it too if they don't get it right? We're all going to vote that to get people in there that want to get it right. So I'm off the stump. I'm not running for office, but I stayed at a Holiday Inn last night, so there you go. All right. So, anybody else? Other questions? Well, I appreciate your time, appreciate your questions. Thank you for indulging, and I will do some homework for you on the EPIC and get back to you with some answers on that, so you can answer that for us as well, okay? Ladies and gentlemen, if you did fill out the forms, if you want to turn them over now, and maybe turn them in when they're walking out to you in the back, thank you for doing that. And I'll be in the back if you have any questions for me as well, more personal. Thank you very much. Thank you.